I never thought a set of brake pads could ruin a relationship, but here I am, still reeling from how quickly things spiraled. My girlfriend's car broke down, and instead of asking if I could help, she told me I'd be covering the repairs. It wasn't a discussion, it was an expectation, like my paycheck was just an extension of her wallet. When I hesitated, when I dared to say no, suddenly I wasn't supportive. Suddenly, I was selfish, stingy, a man who didn't care. What made it worse was that she wasn't broke, she had savings. She just didn't want to touch them. She wanted me to step in, unquestioning, like a provider she could lean on whenever it suited her. I wasn't against helping, but the entitlement burned deeper than any expense. And when I uncovered what she'd really been doing with her money, the betrayal was worse than any mechanic's bill. My name is Evan Rourke. I'm 31, male, and I work as a senior data analyst for a mid-market logistics firm called Tri-Arc Freight, spreadsheets, SQL, dashboards, the whole quiet grind. I'm good at timelines and audit trails. I believe numbers are just stories that stop lying. That's probably why, at 8:12 a.m. on a wet Thursday in March, when my girlfriend's Corolla coughed its last at a red light and she called me crying, I opened a new note on my phone and titled it, Riley/Brake Incident, Primary Log. I was at my desk by the window, coffee still too hot to drink. Riley's voice came through the speaker thin and frantic. It's smoking, Ev. The pedals mush. I can't even, can you just pay the shop? Please. I'm blocking traffic. I asked where she was. She said Maple and 3rd, by the Blue Pharmacy. I asked what happened before the smoke. She said nothing, just driving. I asked which shop. She'd already called a tow through her insurance, they were taking it to Southline Auto on Archer. I know that place, bright banners for financing available and a reputation for stapling extras onto estimates. I toggled my note, typed, 8:12, Riley stranded. Go to Southline, her choice. Then I told her I was on my way. By 8:31, I was walking into Southline's glass box office. The air smelled like coolant and old coffee. A TV looped a daytime court show. The service advisor, a big guy with a trimmed beard and a name tag that read Trent, printed an intake sheet while the tow truck backed the Corolla into Bay 2. Riley rushed me, mascara smudged, hoodie soaked at the shoulders. She grabbed my forearm like we were stepping off a curb in the dark. They said it's probably the brakes. They can look right now, she said, already moving me toward the counter. Can you just put your card on file? Let's see the estimate first, I said. Trent clicked, frowned like we were all in this together. We'll do a quick inspection. You don't want to leave it unsafe. Could be front pads to metal, could be a seized caliper. We'll print the estimate in 10. Riley exhaled, turned to me. Ev, can you just, she rubbed her temples. I get paid next week, but I can't be without a car for work. You know my boss. I know her boss, fictional marketing agency, late starts, early happy hours. Riley's a junior account coordinator, 27, bright, quick with people, allergic to budgets. I'd been covering little things for months, her phone upgrade just for a cycle, a surprise weekend trip I'll Venmo you later, a pet deposit they're holding my check. She always meant to pay. Meaning turned out to be heavy and slow. At 8:46, Trent slid the paper across the counter like a bill at a steakhouse. I angled it toward the window light and read every line. Front brake pads, 1 mm, metal on rotor, replace, front rotors, warped, replace, left front caliper, seized, replace, rear shoes, contaminated, replace, brake fluid, flush, recommended, serpentine belt due, cabin filter, throttle body cleaning. Subtotal parts/labor, $1,128.67. Shop supplies/hazmat/disposal, $38. Tax, $96.41. Total, $1,263.08. Can we do just what's necessary to make it safe? I asked. Trent lifted his eyebrows like I'd suggested skipping oxygen. We don't piecemeal brakes. Liability, my dude. And you really don't want to mix old with new. I turned to Riley. Do you want to get a second estimate? We could tow it to Brake Max on Hazel, they did mine for $420 all in last year. She blinked. I can't tow all over town. I have a 10 a.m. call. They can do it now if you just, her hand made a quiet gesture of swiping a card. I'll pay you back Friday. I looked at her. At the paper. At the line items that sounded like padding around a core truth. Yes, the front brakes were gone. Yes, a caliper could seize. No, nobody on earth needs a throttle body cleaning to stop at a red light. I thought about my rent, about the quarterly tax I'd set aside, About the little envelope in my desk labeled for when things break. That envelope was for my things. Let me call Brake Max and ask about the caliper, I said. I stepped aside and dialed. The tech there told me a seized caliper on an aging Corolla wasn't unheard of, but he'd want to confirm before replacing. If it's just pads/rotors, we do it for $385 parts and labor. Caliper adds $150, he said. Fluid flush is $79 if you want it. We don't bundle. Your call. I logged it, 8:54, Brake Max quote, $385 to $614. Then I held the Southline estimate next to it and felt something hot slide under my ribs, less about money, more about the posture of assumption in Riley's voice. We'd been together 13 months. I knew what she could afford in broad strokes. I also knew 2 nights ago she'd ordered a pair of limited run sneakers and a bottle of rye from a boutique shop because the package had arrived at my place for safety. Her building gets package theft. The receipt inside said $318.90. Riley, I said quietly, I can front some, but I'm not putting the whole thing on my card. We can tote a Brake Max or do only what's needed here, but I'm not paying for their recommended list. And I need you to cover at least half. Her face closed, like I'd turned off a light. Half? Evan, are you serious? You make more than me. It's brakes. This is what boyfriends do. What boyfriends do, I repeated, to hear how it sounded out in the air. Trent's smile had tightened into professional neutral. He slid the pen back toward us with 2 fingers, the tip resting on the signature line. Riley, I said, still soft, do you have anything in savings? That was the pivot. A beat of silence. She went very still. Why are you asking me that? Because if you do, this makes more sense as your expense. It's your car. She swallowed. I'm not touching my savings for this. Why? For emergencies. I gestured at the Corolla, its wheel off, the rotor a dull dish. What do you call this? Something my boyfriend takes care of, she said, and we both heard the steel under it. I stared at the estimate again. The extra lines felt like lint on a suit, trivial and telling. I circled throttle body cleaning with the pen and wrote decline. I did the same to the cabin filter, the belt. I initialed next to necessary brake work and crossed out the caliper with a note, replace only if piston seized, document photo plus measurement. Old habit, if you can't trust incentives, ask for proof. Trent didn't like that. We don't do half commitments. Then I authorized pads/rotors, hold on caliper until you show me it's seized, I said. And I want the old parts back. Bagged. Riley's voice rose. Evan, stop micromanaging. Just pay it and let them fix it. I'm not paying the full amount, I said, calm as I could make it. And I'm not authorizing anything recommended unless it addresses the immediate safety issue. She turned away, face red, hands in her hair. I can't believe this. Trent leaned in. We can't proceed without a card. Riley looked at me, eyes glossy, decision already made on my behalf. Fine. I'll just put it on your Amara. You have points, right? That was the part that told the truth faster than any invoice. She'd slid my Amara Visa into her phone wallet weeks back to cover a dinner in case I forget my purse. Somehow it had stayed there. I took a breath and chose the line I would not cross. No, I said. Take it out of your own account. She blinked, and anger burned off into something icier. So that's it? You're leaving me stranded? I'm standing in the shop with you. I'm offering to split the essential work or tow for a cheaper quote. I'm not your ATM. The room had the hush of a library after closing. Outside, the rain softened to mist. Somewhere in Bay 3, an impact gun rattled, then stopped. Riley turned on her heel and walked to the door, then back, then to the door again. Finally she faced Trent. Do the work. Put it on my card, she said through her teeth. And be quick. He nodded, business restored. We'll text updates. On the drive to drop her at her office, she stared out the window and typed with furious precision. My phone buzzed a minute later. Riley, I can't believe how selfish you are. This is humiliating. Another ping, don't expect me at your place tonight. I kept both hands on the wheel and said nothing. At a red light, I glanced at the passenger footwell. The cardboard box from the sneakers was still there, taped shut after we'd opened it 2 nights ago. On the side, a printed invoice peeked from a gap in the flap. I could see the total. $318.90. For a belt of leather and some marketing myth. I used to think fights had winners. In that moment, all I felt was a click in the mechanism of the story I was telling myself about us. Something had slipped a tooth. The next time the gears turned, I knew they wouldn't line up the same. Back at my desk, I opened the note again and added, 9/27, Riley paid with her card after I refused. Texts accusing me of being selfish. Keep all receipts. Request photo of seized caliper if claimed. Then I created a new folder on my desktop and named it /r_break/. It was the kind of thing you do when you know you're going to need to prove, later, that you were reasonable. I didn't plan revenge. I planned documentation. Same difference, sometimes, depending on who's reading. The next morning, Riley came over to my apartment before work. She didn't knock, just walked in with her spare key and dropped her tote on the floor like it weighed 100 pounds. The smell of her perfume hit before she said anything. I was halfway through making coffee, already bracing. You embarrassed me yesterday, she said flatly, without even looking at me. She was scrolling on her phone, thumbs tight, jaw locked. You made me look poor in front of that guy. I set the mug down. Trent? He doesn't care who pays. He's a service writer. She finally looked up, eyes sharp. You don't get it. You're supposed to have my back. When stuff like this happens, the guy steps up. That's just what boyfriends do. There it was again, that phrase. What boyfriends do. Like there was a manual somewhere I hadn't been issued. I asked her, and what girlfriends do? Where's that list? She scoffed, turned away. This isn't about lists. It's about partnership. You make more, so you cover more. That's just fair. Fair. I rolled the word around like a coin in my pocket. My salary was solid, yes, but her version of fair sounded suspiciously like you pay, I save. I told her I'd seen the sneaker box still in her car, that I knew what they cost. She flushed, quick as a struck match. That was a gift to myself. Totally different. Different how? I asked. Because it's fun instead of necessary? She crossed her arms, voice rising. I work hard. I deserve nice things. I'm not draining savings for stupid car stuff when you could have just covered it and moved on. Why are you acting like this is some huge betrayal? I leaned against the counter, watching her spin out. Because you expected me to pay without even asking. Because when I didn't, you made me the villain. And because I know you're not broke, Riley. You're choosing not to spend your money. That landed. She went quiet, shoulders rigid. She stared at the floor tiles for a long moment before saying, if you're going to keep score like this, maybe we shouldn't even be together. It wasn't an idle threat. I could feel the weight behind it, the dare in her voice. She was testing whether I'd fold. I didn't. Instead, I said, if asking questions and setting limits counts as keeping score, then maybe you're right. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She snatched it up, read something, and her whole demeanor shifted. She grabbed her tote, muttered I'll see you later, and slammed the door hard enough to rattle my frames. The silence after was heavier than the slam. I stood there, coffee gone cold, thinking about all the little moments where expectations had crept into our relationship like mold in the corners. Who booked dinners? Who paid deposits? Who covered until payday that never seemed to arrive? It wasn't about the breaks. It was about a pattern. I opened my laptop, created a spreadsheet, and titled it Shared Expenses, 13 months. I started listing everything I could remember, dates, amounts, categories. I wasn't sure yet whether I was building a case for myself or a mirror for her. Either way, it felt like the first step toward clarity. And in the quiet of that apartment, with only the hum of the fridge and the clicking of my keys, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be anyone's fallback wallet. Not Riley's. Not anyone's. The expectations had been drawn in chalk. It was time to bring rain. By the weekend, the spreadsheet was filling itself in faster than I expected. Once I started combing through bank statements and old texts, the pattern jumped out like rust under fresh paint. June 14th, I paid $289 for her phone upgrade. She said she'd Venmo me back after her bonus. No transfer ever came. July 3rd, $417 for the lake cabin rental just until her paycheck cleared. Cleared, but no payback. September 22nd, $960 deposit for her new apartment. Supposed to be split evenly. I never saw her half. December 9th, $178 vet bill for her cat, Milo. She promised to cover it once her student loan deferment kicked in. It never did. Altogether, 12 entries, just over $3,600 in temporary covers. It wasn't about the money anymore, it was about the story those numbers told. A story of me plugging holes while she steered the ship toward open water, carefree. On Sunday morning, she showed up again, all smiles this time, as if Thursday's fight had been a bad dream. She curled up on my couch with Milo in her lap, scrolling Instagram while I brewed coffee. "Car's running smooth now," she said casually, not looking up. "South Line said the caliper really was seized. Good thing I didn't listen to you about piecemealing." "Did they show you proof?" I asked. She frowned. "Proof? Photo? Measurement? Anything?" "No," she said slowly, like I was speaking another language. "Why would I need that? They're the experts." I wrote a note in my phone, 9:42, claimed caliper seized. No proof requested. She noticed me typing and narrowed her eyes. "What are you doing?" "Logging things," I said honestly. "God, Evan. You make everything feel like an interrogation." But I wasn't interrogating. I was documenting. Because cracks were forming in her story, and I needed more than memory when those cracks split wide. Later that day, I found one more. She'd left her laptop open while in the shower. A spreadsheet titled Vacation Fund was sitting on the screen. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Balance, $5,842.17. So she had savings. More than enough to cover the breaks. More than enough to cover every temporary cover I'd done in the past year. Yet she chose not to spend a dime. That night, I stared at my own expense log and the photo of her sneakers I'd saved to the same folder. A line connected everything: her car, her shoes, the cabin, the vet bill, the unspoken expectation that my money was always more available than hers. And I felt it, not just suspicion now, but certainty. This wasn't about need. This was about control. The cracks weren't just in her story. They were in us. Once I saw the vacation fund, I couldn't unsee it. $6,000 sitting untouched while she let me bleed for her car, her cat, her deposits. It wasn't desperation driving her, it was convenience. She wanted her money free for wants, while mine covered needs. I decided to stop guessing and start pulling threads. First, I went through our texts. Every time she said, "I'll pay you back," I copied the message into my log with a timestamp. 15 entries. Only one repayment, $40 for takeout, which she Venmoed after I reminded her twice. Next, I checked the Amara app. I'd added her as an authorized user months ago, back when things were good and trust felt automatic. I opened the spending breakdown. 3 charges caught my eye. $76.44, Pure Glow Salon, March 1st. $214.55, Lux Threads, February 27th. $39.99, Vino Box Subscription, February 15th. I hadn't made any of them. They were Riley's, slipped through on my card without a word. I screenshotted everything and saved it in /r_break/ under a new subfolder, unauthorized charges. The smell of deceit isn't loud, it's subtle, like mold under wallpaper. But once you know it's there, you can't breathe the same way again. On Tuesday, I went to her place to fix her Wi-Fi. Really, I just wanted a look. She left me alone in the living room while she showered, and I pulled open the side drawer of her desk. Inside were envelopes, bank statements, unopened. The top one showed her balance, $5,614. A dip from the $5,842 I'd seen, but still more than enough to cover the car outright. I didn't take the paper. I just noted the number, logged the date, and closed the drawer carefully. By then, I wasn't just cataloging expenses. I was building a timeline, a chain of custody for every dollar that had passed between us. If this turned into a confrontation, which it would, I wasn't going to rely on he said, she said. I was going to have the receipts. Literally. That night, I sent her a casual message: "Hey, how's your savings holding up after the car?" She replied instantly, "Don't worry about it. I didn't touch my savings. That's for real emergencies." There it was in writing. Confirmation. I screenshot it and filed it under contradictions. When I lay down that night, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt heavy, like I was dragging a net full of stones behind me. Every piece of proof made it harder to deny what I already knew. This wasn't about a car anymore. It wasn't even about money. It was about a person who believed my effort, my earnings, my stability were hers to claim, while hers stayed locked away for pleasures and plans I'd never be part of. And for the first time, I thought seriously about the endgame, not just of this fight, but of the whole relationship. It happened by accident. Or maybe inevitability is a better word. Friday night, Riley invited me over. She was in good spirits, playing music, pouring drinks, acting like nothing had ever cracked between us. I played along, but the whole time, my mind kept circling the same question: what else don't I know? When she went to grab another bottle from the fridge, Her phone buzzed on the counter. A notification lit the screen: deposit, plus $1,250, savings transfer. I wasn't snooping. I just happened to see it. But that one line told me more than weeks of arguing. She was actively moving money into savings, growing the very account she'd sworn she couldn't touch, while telling me she couldn't afford her breaks. Later, when she ducked into the bathroom, I picked up her laptop. Same spreadsheet, different tab: vacation fund, Q3 targets. Targets. Not balances. She had goals: new luggage, a resort in Tulum, spa packages. Each line item had checkmarks next to it, green and neat. The total earmarked? $7,200. And then, below it, in the notes column, car maintenance equals Evan, prob. I just sat there, staring at that one line until the words burned into me. She had budgeted me, my role in her life reduced to 3 letters and a parenthetical assumption. When she came back, she curled against me on the couch, sipping her drink like nothing was wrong. "What's on your mind?" she asked. "Just work," I lied. But inside, something cold and precise clicked into place. This wasn't just neglect or immaturity. This was strategy. She wasn't failing to contribute, she was actively planning not to. I started drafting my own plan that night. If she wanted to write me in as a line item, fine. I'd rewrite the budget, with the cost being her credibility. I backed up my folder /r_breaks/ to the cloud. Then I started sketching how to turn private documentation into public exposure. Nothing flashy, nothing petty, just the clean truth, lined up in order, impossible to refute. Because numbers don't lie. People do. And Riley had just handed me the proof I needed to make sure her lies wouldn't stand. I chose Saturday morning. Riley hated mornings: she was slow, groggy, easier to read. I made coffee at my place, lined the kitchen table with the evidence like a prosecutor prepping for trial: printouts of bank statements, screenshots, my spreadsheet of shared expenses. When she arrived, still in sweats and sunglasses, she tossed her bag down and asked, "What's all this?" "Clarity," I said. I slid the first page across, the Southline estimate beside the Break Max quote. "You told me you couldn't afford to pay for your breaks. But you had more than $6,000 in savings." She froze, then rolled her eyes. "I told you. Savings aren't for stuff like that. They're for real emergencies." I flipped the page. Screenshot of her text: "Didn't touch my savings." Beside it, the deposit notification: plus $1,250.00, savings transfer. Her jaw tightened. "You went through my phone?" "No," I said evenly. "It popped up on the counter." "You lied to me, Riley." She crossed her arms. "Everyone moves money around. That doesn't mean anything." I didn't answer. I just slid the next sheet, her vacation fund spreadsheet. Highlighted in yellow: car maintenance equals Evan, prob. Her face went pale, then red. "You had no right. You wrote me into your budget," I cut in. My voice was steady, controlled. "Not as your partner. As your safety net. You planned for me to pay your bills while you stacked cash for vacations and sneakers. That's not partnership. That's exploitation." For a long moment, she said nothing. Just stared at the papers like they might rearrange themselves into something less damning. Then she laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "You're insane," she said. "You're literally building a case against me like I'm on trial." I leaned forward. "I'm building a record. Because I don't want to be gaslit into thinking this is normal. It's not." She slammed her palms on the table. "So what? You want me to write you a check? Fine. How much do you think I owe you?" $3,624, I said without hesitation. "That's the total of every temporary cover I've logged." Her mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't expected me to know the number down to the dollar. "Pay me back," I said. "Or we're done." Silence. The hum of the fridge filled the space. Finally she muttered, "You wouldn't actually leave me over this." I held her gaze. "Try me." She pushed back from the table, grabbed her bag, and stormed out without another word. The door slammed hard enough to shake the frames on the wall. When the sound faded, I looked down at the papers spread across the table. The ultimatum wasn't just for her. It was for me too. A line in the sand. Either she crossed it with accountability, or I crossed it without her. By Monday, the story had already spread. Not my story, hers. At 9:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from her friend Kelsey. "Wow. Didn't know you were that kind of guy." No explanation, just judgment, cold and certain. At 10:42, my sister called. "Evan, what's going on? Riley just posted some cryptic thing about men who refuse to support their partners. People are DMing me." By lunch, 3 mutual friends had unfollowed me on Instagram. By dinner, Riley herself had posted a photo of her Corolla, brakes gleaming under a filter, with the caption, "Some people would rather watch you crash than help you stop. #selfish #less unlearned." I screenshotted everything. Saved it into /r_breaks/fallout/. That night, I confronted her over text. "You're telling people I refuse to support you?" Her reply came quick, "Because you didn't. You made me beg for safety. Who does that to someone they love?" I typed, deleted, retyped. Finally I settled on, "Who lies about savings while asking someone else to cover their bills?" She left me on read. The next day at work, Trent, the service writer from Southline, actually called me. "Hey, just wanted to confirm you're the boyfriend from the Corolla last week? Your girlfriend came in again. She mentioned you refused to help and she had to max her card. She was pretty upset." Even the mechanic knew now. It wasn't just humiliation, it was strategic. She was building a narrative where I was the stingy, cold partner, and she was the struggling woman abandoned in a moment of need. And the worst part? People bought it. Nobody saw the receipts I had stacked neatly in my folder. Nobody saw the sneakers, the vacation fund, the $1,250 deposit into savings. Riley understood something most people never admit: perception often outweighs truth. If she got enough voices echoing her side, the facts wouldn't matter. But I understood something too. Perceptions crumble fast when you can put timestamps and $signs on the table. By Wednesday, I made a decision. I wasn't going to defend myself with words. I was going to dismantle her story with evidence. Not in private. Not in whispers. In the same public square she chose to humiliate me. The fallout was her move. The counterstrike would be mine. Riley wanted perception on her side. Fine. I'd give her perception, backed with proof. The opportunity came faster than I expected. Her friend group was planning a Saturday night gathering at Jordan's loft, one of those open floor parties where half the people are acquaintances, and the other half are audience. Perfect stage. On Friday, I messaged Jordan privately. "Mind if I bring something to show everyone? Nothing dramatic, just some receipts Riley and I need to clear up. People are getting the wrong idea." He replied with a shrug emoji. "As long as it's not a fistfight, man." That was my green light. I prepared like I would for a client audit. Printed the shared expenses spreadsheet, color-coded by category. Compiled screenshots of Riley's texts promising repayment. Highlighted the bank transfer into her savings. Enlarged the line from her vacation fund spreadsheet, "Car maintenance equals Evan, prob." I bound everything into a slim folder, labeled the front in block letters, "Riley, claims versus facts." Saturday night, the loft smelled like beer and pizza grease, music low enough to talk over. Riley was already there, laughing with Kelsey, glass of wine in hand. She froze when she saw me walk in with the folder tucked under my arm. "You didn't," she hissed when I got close. "Didn't what?" I said lightly. "Didn't bring receipts?" "Of course I did." Her eyes widened. "Evan. Don't. Not here." But she'd chosen here first. She'd made it public. I was just answering in kind. Around 10 p.m., when the group was clustered in the kitchen swapping stories, I set the folder on the counter and said, "Since Riley's been telling people I refuse to support her, I thought it'd be good for everyone to see the full picture. Transparency's fair, right?" The room went still. Riley's face flushed red, then white. I opened the folder. Page by page, I laid it out. The Southline estimate versus Breakmax's cheaper quote. Her text promising not to touch savings. The screenshot of the $1,250 transfer into savings. The sneaker invoice. And finally, the spreadsheet line, "Car maintenance equals Evan, prob." The silence broke into murmurs. Kelsey looked at Riley, then back at me. "Wait, you had money?" Riley stammered. He's twisting things." "No," I said, calm, controlled. "These are screenshots. Bank statements." Her own words. "Dates, times, balances. I didn't twist anything." I slid the last page across the counter to her, the one with the highlighted budget note. "You wrote me into your savings plan as your mechanic fund. I wasn't your partner, Riley. I was your ATM." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The group was watching, and the silence stretched too long. Kelsey whispered something to Jordan. Someone else shook their head. The perception she'd built cracked in real time, under the weight of facts. Riley grabbed the folder, slammed it shut, and stormed out without a word. The door rattled on its hinges. Nobody followed. That was the trap. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't insulted. I'd just shown the truth in the same space she'd tried to paint me as a villain. And perception, just like that, flipped sides. The Monday after Jordan's party, the ripples started spreading. I didn't push them, they moved on their own. First came the silence. Riley went dark on social media. The girl who'd been posting cryptic captions and filtered break photos suddenly had nothing to say. Her last post was still there, but the comments had turned. Thought you said you were broke? Eyes emoji. This aged badly. Maybe don't use people like ATMs lol. By Tuesday, Kelsey unfollowed her. That was seismic. Kelsey had been Riley's closest ally. On Wednesday, I got a DM from an old coworker of Riley's. Hey, just so you know, she's been telling people at her office that you're controlling with money. But someone showed the spreadsheet from Saturday. People aren't buying her story anymore. It was out of my hands now. The documents I'd shown at the loft had traveled. Screenshots of screenshots, passed along through group chats, whispered about in office kitchens. By Thursday, Jordan texted me, "Bro, I don't know what you did, but Riley's been asking everyone to take her side. Nobody's biting. She's pissed." And on Friday, I got the call. Riley herself. Voice tight, brittle. "You humiliated me," she said. "No," I replied evenly. "I told the truth in the same room where you told lies. That's not humiliation. That's correction." "You think people respect you now?" She snapped. "They just think you're petty. Dragging me through the mud with spreadsheets? Who does that?" "People who are tired of being exploited," I said. "People who prefer receipts over rumors." There was a long silence. Then she muttered, "You'll regret this," and hung up. But I didn't. Because the next time I checked my folder /r_break/, I realized I hadn't even needed to weaponize all of it. The evidence had done the work on its own. Timestamps and $signs cut deeper than any insult. Riley had wanted to win by perception. But perception backed by proof is heavier than perception built on words. And she'd handed me enough proof to collapse her entire case. By the end of that week, the narrative had flipped. I wasn't the selfish boyfriend who refused to help. I was the guy who'd finally had enough of being used, and had the receipts to prove it. After Riley's call, I expected more fallout, angry texts, friends cutting ties, maybe even one last ambush at my apartment. But instead, I got silence. By the following week, her absence had a physical weight to it. No shoes by the door, no perfume lingering in my car, no late-night calls about forgotten rent checks or emergencies that somehow always involved my wallet. The quiet was unfamiliar, but it wasn't unwelcome. I cleaned. That's what I did with the silence. I pulled her hoodie from the back of my chair, boxed up the stray makeup in my bathroom drawer, and stacked the half-read book she'd left scattered around my place. I set the box by the door, taped shut, labeled in block letters, "Riley." When she finally came to pick it up, she didn't say much. Just stood there in the doorway, arms crossed, scanning the apartment like she was taking inventory of what used to be hers. "You're really done?" she asked, voice flat. "Yes," I said. Her jaw worked like she wanted to argue, but the evidence between us was too heavy. She just shook her head, muttered something I couldn't catch, and left with the box. After she was gone, I opened my laptop one last time, navigated to /r_break/, and compressed the folder into a single archive. I didn't delete it. I just moved it to an external drive, labeled, dated, stored. Not out of pettiness. Out of principle. Documentation matters. The aftermath wasn't dramatic. No screaming matches, no public meltdowns. Just the slow unwinding of a relationship built on uneven ground. My friends reached out in quiet solidarity. Hers drifted away or stayed silent. And me? I kept working, kept logging, kept moving forward. I thought the satisfaction would come from exposing her. But really, it came from the stillness afterward. From knowing that the next time someone tried to write me into their budget as a safety net, I'd see it sooner. I'd cut the rope before I got pulled under. The Corolla still drove past my office sometimes, brakes clean and new. I never waved. Never honked. Just let it pass, a reminder of what I'd left behind. And every time, the same thought settled in my chest: some repairs aren't worth paying for. 3 weeks after it all collapsed, I was walking back from the corner store when I spotted Riley's Corolla parked across the street. She was inside, head bent over her phone, engine idling. For a second, I thought she'd seen me and was waiting. But when I crossed in front of her car, she never looked up. The moment stretched. I could see the faint reflection of my own face in her windshield, just above hers. For 13 months, we'd shared dinners, bills, promises, and lies. Now it was glass and silence between us. I didn't wave. Didn't knock on the window. I just walked past, bag of groceries in hand, the sound of her idling engine fading behind me. Because the truth was, I'd already said everything that needed saying, line by line, receipt by receipt. The rest was just aftermath. And as the streetlight flicked green and her car rolled away, I realized something simple, final, and sharp enough to cut clean. I hadn't refused to pay for her repairs. I'd refused to keep being one